She's an occupational therapist. She's also a psychologist. But what I think her passion is working with young people and empowering them through soccer.
That's quite cool, I think, because a lot of young boys especially love soccer. So.
Exactly. Hello to you and a warm welcome to Visionaries. Thank you so much for joining us. It's good to have you in our midst. As iron sharpens iron, so man sharpens the countenance of man. My guest today uses her expertise as an occupational therapist and psychologist to grow champions. Help me welcome Samantha Toweel. Sam, thank you so much for joining us. Hello to you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Let's talk a little bit about the makings of Samantha. Born and raised in Johannesburg, I believe it was?
That's correct, yes.
Tell me a little bit about your mom. I know you speak very fondly of her.
My mom was definitely the anchor of our family, and she and my dad had the most amazing connection. They met in church. My dad noticed her legs on the way to the altar to receive communion and made sure that he got her number after Mass. And they were married for 49 years before he passed. So if I've ever seen a testimony of love, that was it.
And I think she did such a phenomenal job, not only being a partner to your dad, but also being a mom to you and your two sisters.
Completely devoted mother,
Yeah.
who constantly told us that being women in the world, we must step out and we must take our place and never give up and have a large voice. And my father replicated that by always being the man behind us, never looking at us as a separate entity or something. Even though he was in the boxing industry filled with men, he really empowered us as girls as well. So they worked, like, it's difficult to separate my parents out. They were very much a unit.
There's a beautiful pic of your mom and dad and you, and I love your expression there on your face because you look really happy, a little bit mischievous, maybe a little cheeky as well. You are the middle child. I suppose you are allowed to rebel a little bit.
Just a little.
Yeah,
yes.
just a little. Your dad, though, was quite a pillar of strength as well.
My dad, just the way he lived his life left a total impact on me. There was not a thing that he did that didn't impact me deeply because he was such a man of honor. He not only was a champion, literally, and a celebrity person who, wherever we went, people would stop him and talk with him, and he always made the time. He had such a place in his world for people, and he really championed empowering people.
Yeah.
So, you know, he taught me what it is to be honorable. He taught me what it is to do the right thing regardless of what the world says, to always answer to God first. And he was a huge risk taker. He never stepped back when there was a situation that was wrong. He would step into it without fear. And, you know, he always said, I fear only God. And he showed me that. And he gave me such an immense amount of courage. And without me realizing, a lot of direction in my life, understanding what change is all about. But I think the main thing came when we had the induction to the Hall of Fame. When my father was inducted, he was asked what was his greatest sporting moment. And I sat there thinking, there's been so many moments in his life that he'd shared with us. And there were so many special things. What is he going to choose? And without hesitation, he said, it was the moment I had a voice to give someone a hand up in life. And that defined success for me.
That success is not success unless you're able to empower others or give to others.
Unless it impacts the world and changes it for the better, what is it?
My word.
So, you know, that was the essence of the man he was. And he championed many world champions and South African champions in boxing once he'd finished his career. But during his career, he actually went to the Minister of Sport with his two brothers, Alan and Morris. My Uncle Morris was in a wheelchair, he had polio, but he managed my father's fights all his life. And my Uncle Alan trained him. And they went to the Minister of Sport and they were really disturbed by the apartheid system.
And I was about to say, because it was a very difficult time, in fact. So this was actually taking his life into his very own hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he went and they wrestled with the Minister of Sport until they got an opportunity to promote a multiracial boxing tournament and actually break apartheid in sport. So my dad always showed me that, you know, it's about getting out there and doing the right thing. You shouldn't stand for prejudice. You shouldn't stand for the norm. You actually need to shake the norm and you need to shape the world.
And I find it very interesting that you and I are both wearing black and white today, as a matter of fact, because something else that your dad instilled in the entire family was not to be worried about status quo and what your neighbors are saying, etc. Oh, you guys have got black people at your house having dinner with you. You're going into the township to teach boxing, because you were ostracized by other people who would frown on that kind of thing, but he didn't care.
He really didn't. And I never knew any different. I was raised during the apartheid time without realizing that I was in an apartheid.
Yeah.
Because we went into the townships and we spent time with the families there. My dad had a big love for people, and he saw you as part of something. Yeah. He didn't say, okay, you're my boxer, so I'll just worry about you. He said, you come from a system. And he would know each person's name. And before his boxing sessions, he would have a prayer circle. Wow. And he would pray for you, Ayanda, and your mom, so-and-so, and your dad, so-and-so.
Wow.
And the boxers, no matter what faith they came from, they all prayed together in their circle. He had no swearing in his gym, no drinking. My dad took a vow when he was 16. He went to Ireland and he saw the impact of alcohol on families, and he said, he's not going to do this. He's going to be someone who stands to help others. So he prayed for people to convert from alcoholism and drug addiction, and he made himself a safe space by never touching it. And he took a vow in our church, it's called the Pioneer Vow, where you pray every day for this, and you make yourself available to people who have an addiction.
I think another lesson that I read somewhere that your father taught you was at a time when he was walking into the venue, the little shack, I believe it was, where he was teaching boxing to the community. Two gentlemen are fighting. One is on the ground about to take a kick from the one who's standing up. Something magical happens at that point that left an imprint, I suppose, in your mind. What was
it? It was
that?
actually a boxing tournament. It was a full boxing tournament, and we were walking in with him, and he saw this fight happening on the outside of the stadium. And he saw the man go down, and then he saw the other man about to kick him, and he stopped him. And he said, you never kick a man who's down, no matter what has happened here. The man is beat, you show respect, you've had your brawl, you step away. And he just had that. Like, it had nothing to do with him. Most people would just turn a blind eye. He was there as a professional boxing trainer. He didn't need to get involved with the spectators. Yeah. But that was never him. He was always involved. And in fact, when he was part of the boxing board, he was a judge at a tournament for amateurs. Yeah. And he was sitting there, and the people next to him, the judges, took out their lunch, and they started eating their fish and chips while these amateurs were fighting. And he said, this is ridiculous. I don't want to be associated with this if this is what's going to happen, because these men may be amateurs, but they're giving their best shots. They're in here, they've worked for this. You show them utter respect, the same as you'd show anybody else. So he always taught my mom and him, because my mom was a teacher, and she had many pupils that she really mentored and helped through very difficult times. And she, they always showed us that a person deserves respect. They're a child of God, and regardless of their status or whatever's happening, you give them the utmost respect.
Dr. Seuss, I believe it was, says a person is a person, no matter how small. Now, I'm speaking a lot about your mom and your dad and sort of the impact and influence they had in your life, because I believe it's quite pivotal to the woman you are today. Definitely. When we come back after the break, I want to know a bit more about your studies. I want to see what you did as a professional, and also where that took you in terms of coming full circle and doing what your mom and dad ended up doing when they were at your age. So when we come back, we speak a little bit more about the professional side of things. Stay with us. Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. Our visionary tonight is Samantha Toweel. She's the founder of Growing Champions. Sam, just before the break, we spoke a little bit about your formative years. Let's talk a bit about the academics now. What led you to occupational therapy, psychology? Tell us more.
So, listening to the story of my family, I think my whole background was about empowering people. I saw people come into my home broken from all walks of life and walk out of my home champions, literally on every level. So with my mom and with my dad. So it just made me really want to be involved with advancing people's potential. So I went to study occupational therapy because I loved the wholeness of it. You look at the person as a whole, and you work with both the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and the, everything together. So I did that. And then while I was working in England, I went to the UK for 5 years, and I came across children who had physical disabilities and they were going into mainstream schools, and we had to integrate them in. And I watched a young girl who had terrible drooling and inability to walk and all these kind of things going into a mainstream high school. And then another girl who was a paraplegic, so her legs wouldn't work, but other than that, she was in a wheelchair and beautiful and could speak. And she fell apart, and the other one didn't. And the other one was popular. She had lots of friends. Everyone wanted to push her around and help her. And I looked at this and I thought, what is the difference? And then I saw it was the family setting and what they were being told, and also the emotional development inside. So I went and studied psychology further. And then I came back to back to South Africa when I had my kids. I wanted them to have their families around them, and we came back. And I went to take my son to a soccer tournament, to soccer training, and I met a coach there, Jeremy Cecil. And he was very entertaining for me because he didn't just look at my son as a soccer player and teach him skills. He was saying to me, "Oh, your son loves humor, so I can really, bribe him with humor. But the other one I need sweets, and this one I need this." And I thought I really like someone who can see individuals. And then we started to talk about sport and having my history of sport. He said, "Yeah, we've got a shared passion in sport." And we started to talk, and then he started to tell me about children that he was working with that came from disadvantaged backgrounds, but he needed help with empowering them. And that's how I came along the side story of meeting 3 groups of children, some from Soweto, some from Diepsloot, and some from Eldorado Park. And one of them happened to be a young man called Keenan Aya. And I noticed that the Eldorado Park crew just didn't want to be seen. They would slide under their chairs, they would not speak, they virtually tried to be invisible. And I never understood why. Everyone else was funky and busy, and they had they had some excitement about life. But these elders crew didn't. They were silenced. And I asked if I can go and visit and find out about Eldorado Park. And then I saw why, because they lived in a gang environment where to be seen was incredibly dangerous. And to be in the shadows was the safe place. So you didn't speak up, and you didn't didn't have a voice or get into the light. And then Keenan and I were working together, and he had this potential to be a phenomenal football player. And he got a scholarship to go to the top football academy in Africa called Right to Dream. So he worked really hard to get the scholarship. The scout came out. Jeremy asked the scout to come out to see him, and he was taken on these trials. He got selected.
Wow.
We were over the moon. And then something terrible happened. And this was a turning point in my life, because Keenan was about to go on this incredible journey of 6-year scholarship to become a professional football player. He was 11 years old, and he'd worked hard for it. So he was just a determined young man. On that football field, you couldn't stop him. Off the football field, he was a traumatized child who would just cry and couldn't speak. It came out that he said to me, he can't go. He can't pursue this dream. And I was, why, Keenan? What do you mean?
It's a fantastic opportunity.
Yes, and he's worked for it. I mean, he had done everything in his potential to get there. And he said to me, "Coach Sam, there's 2 reasons. One is dreams don't come true. I'm afraid to dream." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "I have an older brother, Delano. I had watched him on the football field. He had scored 11 goals in a football match, a phenomenal player. And now he's a drug addict and a gangster. So he said, if he couldn't make it, there's no way I could." But more than that, he said to me, and this is the point that stopped me dead and my whole life turned direction. He said to me, "Coach Sam, if my brother, every night he goes out, I don't know who he's hurting. I don't know if he's going to come back alive. So if I've got 10 days left with him of his life, I'll give up my dream for those 10 days.
My brother's name is Yalando. He's good at football. When he started to go play at the academy, he started to smoke drugs.
I disappointed my brothers in many ways.
He doesn't play football anymore.
I want to be out, see. It's not me. It's just something inside. I can't fight.
It doesn't matter how many degrees you have, what do you do with the reality that this child is living? So my heart just jumped and I said, I really have to understand and I have to help this kid. And I said to him, Keenan, God has put you on a path. You've earned this. He's given you a gift. You've used it. You've got to keep walking. That's your path. I'm an occupational therapist. I work with drug addiction. Let me try and approach your brother. So I went to speak to Delano, and I said to him, you know, your brother's prepared to give up his dream because of his love for you. Are you prepared to change your life?
Because of your love for him.
And you know what? He started to cry, and he said, Sam, no one's ever said they love me. And this is where I decided to found Growing Champions, because these kids needed a pathway to be able to see a different way of life and not fall into the cycle that poverty and addiction and abuse brought for them. And so Growing Champions is an identity. The growing comes forth a change, being a dynamic person who's going to become someone who progresses in life. And a champion is someone who beats the opponent. So if they're facing poverty, they overcome it. If they're facing violence, they overcome it. And, you know, I realized only after I named the organization that I'd actually taken my parents and put it into an organization, because my mother was the teacher. She was always teaching us to grow and learn. And my father was the champion. So, you know, that's why that heritage is so important for me. And these kids are rebelling against the heritage they have. They don't want to be the next teenage pregnancy. They don't want to be the next gangster.
Drug addict.
You know, when I met these kids, they told me, I had a 19-year-old young man sitting next to me, and I was giving him an opportunity to get a learnership, and he said to me, it's okay. Like, since I was 3, my uncle told me how to survive prison. It's okay. I know how to read tattoos, and I know how to speak gang language. I'll be okay. And he had surrendered to that because that was what he knew.
He didn't know there was an alternative.
He never knew there was anything else. And that's why we're opening their world. You know, we're taking them across that park, and we're teaching them a new way of living so that they can champion change and help the next one.
I love that it's more than just football. So there's personal development.
Yes.
You're also dealing with some of the psychosocial issues in the community, but you're doing it in a fun way that all kids can relate to. Because sometimes if you sit them down and you lecture them, you know, it goes in one ear and out the other. But when you're on a football field, you're able to show the parallels between this game and in life and how they can become the champions, like you say. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we had rules. You know, we would take our boys out of a football game if they broke the code that we had. Even if the referee wasn't giving them a card, we would pull them off. And they would learn that they have to play life's game by life's rules. But the parents now have come on board as well, because when they see their children change and shine and become someone, they want to become someone. So that broken person who thought they could never do something is now rising. And the children are influencing the change rather than the other way around. Yeah.
So the ripple effect is far and wide.
It's
we actually have a
definitely.
surprise after the break, and I'm very tempted to say who that surprise is, but I'm going to be good and I'm going to resist. You're just going to have to wait and see. Stay with us. Hello again. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, the anticipation is over. The surprise guest is Delano. Delano, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to you.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like your ears must be itching because the whole time on the show, we've just been talking about you and talking about you and talking about you. And Sam was just saying just what a dynamic young man that you are and how you've been able to do incredible things alongside Sam as well. Tell me about the journey and what it's been like to see someone like her give back and inspire you to do the same.
Well, it's been a long journey. It's been a journey of checking and rechecking myself first. And it's been a journey where I had to choose all the time to get back up. Because I could have made life harder, but I chose to make it easier for those people behind me that never had leaders. You know, I never had leaders. I had guys, or I had accomplices, you know. And I had a dream once to choose to be a footballer or the biggest gangster. Because I could see that to get a car by standing on a corner is quite easy, but that I'll have to run for the rest of my life. But I did it anyway. And, you know, meeting Sam, at first when I met Sam, I thought, okay, a different bank.
Yeah, here's this white lady. We're going to fleece her.
So now I need to work on my English now. And eventually, you know, because she's studied and she's smart and She knows people. She figured out that my only option, or my only, the only thing that I wanted was to feed my habit. However, it didn't work that way. We ended up working together, and Sam wanted to make a lot of dreams possible for me. She said to me, would you want to try and play football again? And I looked at the reality. I looked at my age. I looked at getting back to fitness, and I looked at a lot of things. And then I looked at the picture of my community, and I was like, what? Living in it at that point, I didn't see that everything I'm surrounded by is sickness. It's like chaos. For me, it was normal, around the corner, smoking a dirty pipe, going around there, taking a line, go there, rob someone's granny. It's normal. It's a give and take situation. But I learned so much by being next to Sam, as a friend, as my sponsor. She gave a lot to me. She paid for a lot. She paid for all my mistakes. And I said, no, I want to help people in my community. I want to put aside my one dream to create many. Because after I lost my dream and started using drugs, I became negative. She spent a lot of coins for me around, so letting me stay here, asking people if I can stay here. But the person inside of me came out, the real me.
Exactly.
I wanted to work for what I got. And people who gave me a space to stay, I would go out and I would ask Sam, you have connections. Could you ask people to donate jumbo? And I'll sell it to pay my rent.
Yes.
I wanted to feel how it feels to work now.
Wow.
And I did it, and I felt ashamed because people drive past me and they look at me, I'm like, so weird person. But I knew my picture I painted is bigger than the one I'm actually looking at now.
You knew where you were going.
And eventually, with my honest living, people started believing in me. But even through that, I thought, okay, here's my chance to just take again. And I was like, nah. But I mean, Sam's an awesome person.
We haven't even gotten to the parts that are less awesome, because just throughout this whole interview, I'm just like, Sam, you're amazing. Sam, listening to Delano say all these wonderful things, I'm sure brings a tear to your eye.
I mean, it's not only on TV.
Give me the scoop, though. Like, does she have annoying habits? Does she like chewing gum? Does she?
You have time.
You may not have a job after this when you're done.
Let's say Sam's strong.
Yes.
So Sam does what Sam needs to do. Yeah. Or Samantha does what she needs to do in order to keep this organization, or her passion. She loves this organization like you won't believe. If you see her outside of this, you'll understand. Sam has her days where she's like focused, and that sometimes my energy can't keep up that much. But Sam's energy is annoying a bit. It's too much. Go. And because I never used to answer to someone, that is a challenge. Yes. But I've managed to deal with it.
Look, you're human after all, Sam. Who knew? Who knew?
And there's a lot that a lot of positive I take from Sam, because she always tried to keep everything professional and positive
all the time.
And there's sometimes I reflect back and I can't think of a day where she's been rude or ugly to someone or myself, and that sometimes makes me feel good that I'm surrounded by someone that has values and it doesn't change because of a situation. But for me, it's different, it changes.
No, for some of us as well, Tamara, you and me both, Delano. But thank you so much for coming through. I really appreciate your honesty and your contribution to this discussion. Keep it up. Well done. Keep it up. Well done. Thank you to the both of you for coming through. Sam, rest a little bit when you need to. Just a little bit every now and again. But otherwise, thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank you.
And long may it last. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for tuning in. For now, it's goodbye. God bless.
To engage is where we gain our joy. To connect is where we find our peace. Be brave. Cross the boundaries. The only way to understand others is to get intimate. And when you do, it'll change your life and enrich it for the best.